Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I am joined by sweet Shanzi from the internet.
I like to talk about the Star Wars, please.
And of course, our own little Chewbacca, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and there's spoilers here, you bunch of people.
Oh, we've got spoilers galore, and that's what we feel we have to say, because sometimes, the people just go into things foot long and don't realize spoiler, but especially if you're new to this show, we do spoilers on all the stuff. So, if you got spurled, that's you. And but we'd love to have you here, and we're glad that you downloaded. And we're also glad that many of you have gone to the internet and give us a 5-star review on iTunes, a.k.a. a humdinger.
Humdinger.
And we really appreciate that. It helps get this show out to other people that are like you who enjoy fine programming, such as we have. More or less. So please check that out, 5-star review. And of course, we'd like to thank everyone who helps support this show over at patreon.com/HMP. It is because of those folks that this show keeps a rolling. When I got to get like a new microphone or new cables or, kind of help with the bandwidth and all that kind of jazz, you people are the ones that help keep this show up and everything. So whether you're all the way down at the dollar level or all the way up, I mean, we have some people that are at $20 or over. God bless all these people. Thank you so very much. We really appreciate all of you. Get yourself an HMP nickname and some extra content while you're at it. Patreon.com/HMP. Well, I don't know if you live in the same world that we do, but there's a little movie out called Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. Came out, kind of a big deal, and we're going to go ahead and review that bad boy. Take a listen to the trailer.
It's an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together. We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Long have I waited. And now you're coming together. Is your undoing.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir. At my friends.
Confronting fear. It's the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny. The Force will be with you.
Always.
And that was the trailer for Rise of Skywalker, our new release review of this weekend. Oh, by the way, thank you guys for chilling with us for a little bit of a day delay on the podcast here. But, we couldn't miss this, man. And we wanted to have the entire group here as well.
Holiday trouble, man. Holiday trouble.
It happens all the time, but you know what? It's important. But let's do this. We've covered Star Wars many a time on this here program, but the man always comes through, so let's do it. Bruce, how you pulling this one off, buddy?
The Knights of Ren. The Knights of Ren were an order of Force-sensitive warriors that rose up in the void that was left in the post-Jedi Sith environment.
What in the... are we...
It's not me.
Oh, I think I know what happened.
Is that...
Oh, I'm sorry. For some reason, it decided to play the next song in iTunes, which apparently was Dire Straits. Enjoy, everybody.
Did the walk. All right.
the
Knights
Skywalker of
Ren-
life. Go ahead, Bruce.
All clever. The Knights of Ren were an order of Force-sensitive warriors that rose up in the void that was left in the post-Jedi Sith environment Jedi Star Wars universe. The group first appeared prior to the slaughter of Jedi Master Luke Skywalker's apprentices. Seduced by the power of the dark side, Ben Solo renounced the Jedi and adopted the name Kylo Ren and the title Master of the Knights of Ren. Along with this change in name and alignment, Kylo took on the role of disciple to the mysterious leader of the First Order, Snoke. And under Snoke's guidance, the Knights of Ren filled that vacuum left by the demise of Darth Vader. Kylo earned the name Jedi Killer by destroying the generation of Jedi trained by Skywalker, though he found himself incapable of killing Luke. Something important to keep in mind is that the Knights of Ren are defined by a code, living life the way they wanted, taking what the galaxy gave them, and consuming what the dark side sent them. Though poorly trained in the ways of the Force, the Knights of Ren's fighting skills and martial prowess were reported to be without equal. Once Kylo ascended to the role of supreme leader of the First Order, the Knights could only be commanded by him, much to the displeasure of many members of the Supreme Council. The Knights of Ren wore battered, rusty armor and concealed their faces beneath ominous masks echoing the helmet of Kylo himself. Each knight was armed with a unique and lethally effective weapon, suited to both close quarters and long-range combat. And it just so happens that the non-Kylo Knights of Ren were actually based on rejected designs for Kylo Ren, which is a nice use of creative recycling, if you ask me. Yeah. Vanity Fair compared the look of the Knights of Ren to characters from Mad Max, and I can't say I disagree. While fleshing out the Knights of Ren for the Star Wars The Rise of Kylo Ren comic book series, Charles Soule took inspiration from motorcycle gangs, classic westerns, and samurai tales to dramatize some of the lore behind the Knights. Though the backstory of the Knights of Ren had yet to be revealed when he wrote the story, I feel quite certain they will each have a name and unique ability and a tragic backstory told courtesy of this comic book connection before I'm done, because I started it before a certain book came out. That's what happens with Star Wars. I mean, if you don't believe me, just look at Lobot, a character that had no speaking lines and not even a clear purpose in the movies, but got his own standalone comic book miniseries that explained him, his raison d'etre, and his unique gifts in painful detail. I read that miniseries, but don't ask me what happened because I don't remember and I don't want to reread it right now. But if you're looking to delve into the Knights of Ren, you're in luck, because on December 18th, 2019, issue number 1 of Star Wars The Rise of Kylo Ren was published, and I'm sure that miniseries will have the answers you're looking for. The first issue places the original Knights of Ren operating long before Ben Solo destroyed Luke Skywalker's Jedi Temple. They were once led by a man named Ren, which I guess explains the name. Charles Soule described the original Ren thusly: I wanted him to read like a charming Darth Vader, a Vader who is charismatic and who is appealing. That's why Ren's skin is burned and he sort of looks the way he does. He's embracing the seductiveness and the damage that the dark side does. Darth Vader, as impressive and imposing and terrifying as he is remote and cold and distant because he has that suit surrounding him, whereas Ren isn't hiding behind it. He's someone you could have a beer with, in theory, end quote. Now, Ren is also the name the Knights use for a lightsaber, and it's the Ren they pledge to follow. As their leader explains in the comics, and a quote here, the Ren doesn't stop to worry about what it's burning or the right or wrong of it, the goals it might achieve. The Ren just is. It lives and it consumes and it doesn't apologize. It is its nature and nothing else. The official visual dictionary of The Rise of Skywalker, penned by Pablo Hidalgo and published December 20th, one day after I began writing this darn comic book connection, offers descriptions for the individual knights. There's Vicruel, who wields an annealed frick scythe blade and calls himself the Harvester. He has the ability to heighten the level of fear in his prey. Cardo, armed with an arm cannon, is the official armorer of the knights, with his skills modifying weapons. Ushar, who carries a war club with concussive blast capabilities, is the kind of fighter who offers slow, agonizing deaths to those who grovel and quick, painless ones to those with the courage to fight back. Wielding an enormous vibro-cleaver, Trudgeon takes keepsakes from his victims. His helmet maintains a fragment of Death Trooper armor, meaning he was powerful enough to kill one in the past. The blinder flaps on Karuk's helmet denote the riflemen of the Knights and the pilot of their ship, the Black Knight Buzzard. Then there's Aplek, the knight who revels in deception and trickery to overwhelm his opponents. In battle, you'll know him by his giant Mandalorian executioner's axe. All their weapons come with modifications that allow for various offensive effects. So that's it, folks. Everything I know about the Knights of Ren.
Yeah, it's funny that, a lot of times we get those people that just go like, oh, we don't know anything about anything. And as always has kind of been the Star Wars case, really, is a lot of this stuff gets related back to comics and books and all these other properties and stuff. So a lot of questions that people have, they exist, the answers.
Yeah, and toys. It helps to sell the toy if you know a little bit about what you're buying. So, back starting with the Kenner days, they managed to flesh out, at least give characters names for the benefit of the toys, if nothing else.
Just so we can sell them under a name. Gosh darn it. Here's the IMDb plotline. IMDb, as we know, always 100% correct in everything they say and or do. Their surviving resistance faces the First Order once more in the final chapter of the Star Wars saga. This is directed by J.J. Abrams, who directed Episode 9 as well, coming back to do this one. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. But let's do this. What are kind of overall feelings? Sean, you were coming into this. What did you think of the last two movies before heading into this one?
My favorite Star Wars is The Last Jedi. It is visually beautiful. It is the most complicated, which is why I think that there's a certain subset of Star Wars fans that have a problem with that movie. It's not good versus bad guys. I mean, it is that, but it's also more than that. It's saying a lot. There are problems with it, of course. It's a Star Wars movie. There's going to be problems with any of them. But Last Jedi is my favorite of the Star Wars movies. And Force Awakens brought me back into Star Wars after years of not caring anymore because the prequels just killed me. So I didn't pay any attention to anything for a long time. And I really like the new characters. They're basically the big four of the four new characters of of these sequels. I love them all. I think they're great. This movie, and somebody described it to me like this. There's a certain baseline enjoyment I'm going to have with Star Wars, especially now. Now that I'm back, there's a certain baseline enjoyment from anything Star Wars related that I'm going to have with any movie that comes out. This movie is it has hit that baseline, and it's a little higher than. Look, the movie is fine. It is very, very problematic. You have two creators who are basically fighting each other. Three creators, if you really think about it. J.J. Abrams, George Lucas, and Rian Johnson.
Well, Colin Trevorrow you could throw in there as well.
Say that again.
Colin Trevorrow you could throw in as well, because technically a large bit of this script is still based on his script. Him and the other cat, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, so sorry about that. They are still first credited with the story, and then JJ and his writer are credited, after the and. You know what I mean? And I know that you know what I mean, but
you're talking about Chris Terrio.
Yeah, exactly. So him and Chris Terrio kind of rewrote more or less everything from Trevorrow's screenplay previous.
Can I ask for just a quick point of clarification, Sean?
Sure.
When you said Last Jedi is your favorite Star Wars, does that include the original trilogy, or do you mean your favorite out of this 7, 8, 9 trilogy?
Well, I mean out of the new movies, okay. The movies that have come out since I'm an adult, because it's impossible to separate like what's a good movie from
You're saying exactly what I'm thinking. Out of 7, 8, 9, 8 is my favorite, far and away, because I really felt trying to do something and say something. And just like you say, 4, 5, and 6, it's hard for me to judge those honestly. I think I gave 6 a super big pass when I was a kid that I don't give it as much now, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But I will agree with you that out of 7, 8, 9, I liked all 3 of them. I liked 8 the best, and I liked 9 the least. It was 5, 6. I also like 6 the least. I think there's maybe just an innate part of me that has a way I want a trilogy to end, and sometimes I'm going to be a little disappointed because, you know, they're not mind readers. And to be honest, if they did make the ending I want, a lot of other people might not like that at all. Part of what I was hoping for in 9 was also set up by 8. So I think if Rian Johnson had stuck around, maybe I'd like a little better, you know, ifs and buts, candy and nuts, all that kind of stuff. But out of 7, 8, 9, I'm going to say 9 is my least favorite of those 3, but something has to be, you know, like Jedi is my least favorite of the original 3. That doesn't mean I'm throwing shade at Jedi. But I'm going to harp a little bit. I just know myself, and I know I'm going to harp on maybe 2 things, maybe 3 things that I didn't like and that I had a problem with. And it's going to sound like I'm crapping on this movie a little bit. And I want to just make it clear right now, I don't want to be lumped in with all the people that are overreacting negatively to this movie. I think this is a fine movie. The problems I have is fitting it into a universe in which there were 8 prior episode movies, not to mention the standalone stuff and all that sort of thing. So as a standalone movie, it's good, but I'm going to have a couple of problems I harp on that I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to sandbag the whole movie because I didn't like a couple things. And once again, you changed the name from Star Wars Rise of Skywalker to like Space Adventure X starring the same people and the same writers. I mean, the same movie, just changed the name, and I'm liking it better, which is not fair to a movie, you know?
Yeah, and as I said on Mandalorian 30 Questions, by the way, you can listen to that on any podcatcher anywhere. Mandalorian 30 Questions, I said earlier, you know, the secret weapon of this of these sequels is Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver. These two actors are so perfect in these roles. And don't get me wrong, John Boyega is awesome. I think that he is great in this role, even though this character has vastly changed from the last time we saw him. And of course, anybody who has a problem with Oscar Isaac, I mean, that's on them. You know what I mean? but you know, Kylo Ren and Rey Palpatine, and I will always call her Palpatine, always. These 2 characters, there's something really terrific and quite frankly magical about these 2, where, you know, I think, as I said again on Mandalorian 30 Questions, I think we are not going to be seeing Rey for a long time. You know, we aren't going to be seeing her for years and years, but I believe that we will see her again. And when we do, there is going to be jaws dropped when she shows up. And I'm very excited to see where they're headed, because now that they don't have to worry about Skywalker and they don't have to worry about all of this stuff weighing them down, they can basically do whatever they want. And it's one of the really cool things about The Mandalorian is that The Mandalorian isn't weighed down by its history. You know, they get to pick and choose what they want to do. I mean, for God's sake, they had the stormtrooper carrier from Kenner as one of the actual vehicles on the show last week.
Yes.
So
I love that.
Right. And that's what I mean. You can pick and choose whatever you want from this point forward. So episode 9 had a lot of water to carry, because not only are you trying to finish this entire thing out, but your original plan to have Princess Leia be the catalyst for all of this, and that actress is no longer with us, well, you're a little boned here. So you have to figure out a way around it. I think they did a very good job for the cards that they have been dealt.
I don't know if Rey's going to be good. I think it'd be a good idea for Rey to be gone for a long time, like you say. I think she shows up the next time they make one of these movies, even if it's
I don't, man. I don't.
I think
I hope not.
I think her pronouncing herself as a Skywalker kind of undercut some of the things I was hoping they would accomplish with this movie, but I don't want to jump too far ahead.
I really don't think that they're gonna bring her back anytime soon. My main thinking for that is because Disney wants to be able to control the narrative with all of these Star Wars movies at this point, because they got burned by the last, basically, I mean, let's be fair here. The last 3 movies kind of burned them a bit. Yeah. You know, they did not have the goodwill that they thought that they would that would propel them into vast more amounts of money than they already have. And I think that what they're going to do now is going to be basically the Mandalorian treatment with anything that they're doing, where something smacks of or looks like but isn't what we've seen previously.
And you look at how this, can I just call it the relaunch of the cinematic universe?
Sure.
It was so dead for so many years, but they have The Force Awakens, which is just a retelling of Star Wars. There's no way you can argue that I'm wrong there. And then they follow that up, and people are starving for anything that feels like episode 4, 5, and 6, because people are kind of burned by the prequels, like severely burned by the prequels. People are hungry for a Star Wars movie.
I was out, bro.
And it smacks so much of Star Wars. And then you follow that up with Rogue One, which I don't rank that among the episode films, but if I were, it's going to be top 3 for me, or at least top 4. I mean, I love Rogue One. Rogue One might be tied for number 1. I don't know. It depends on what kind of day I'm having, but I love Rogue One. So they also hit it off with like a 12-inch putt or like a 6-inch putt with The Force Awakens. They don't stick their neck out at all. They play it safe and everybody's happy. Then Rogue One, to me, is just an amazing masterpiece of movie making. Even if it weren't a Star Wars movie, it would be great. But because it's a Star Wars movie and people still embraced it like they did. And then it gets followed up with negative reception from what I think is a really good movie with The Last Jedi. And then this movie just... I think it's still too early to know exactly how the public's going to feel about it, but they brought back JJ. They're like, we're going to get back that magic we had with Force Awakens. But, Solo came out in the meantime, and it was the first I would call really soft opening for a Star Wars movie. And then this one has fallen slightly short of projections. So I think that the 3-year break they're talking about is a great idea. Make people get hungry again, and also keep exploring this Disney Plus thing, because I'm loving what they're doing there.
Yeah, and projections are nothing. Projections mean literally nothing. I think that's one of the dumbest markers to go by on whether or not a movie is great or not. That is literally people who kind of sort of think they know what they're doing, guessing. I mean, that's all that is. That means nothing. But what I think when it comes to, like, let's go backwards for a second, okay? Let's talk about The Last Jedi. So The Last Jedi, Star Wars, the reason why The Last Jedi is my favorite movie is that it feels so different from the previous movie. I mean, you have the same characters, but that's about it. The themes of the movie are vastly different. The way that time is handled in that movie is so totally different than anything else with Star Wars. And that's why I loved it. And also, I mean, you guys know, this is not a secret. I am so in the bag for anything Rian Johnson does. I'm a massive Rian Johnson fan. I was before The Last Jedi came out.
I was not necessarily someone I would call a Rian Johnson fan until The Last Jedi came out. So it won me over big time. And what I liked about The Last Jedi is I felt like he was experimenting some higher level character development themes. I felt like there was a switch coming on. I feel like he looked at things that J.J. Abrams put on the screen that he hadn't thought all the way through, and Rian Johnson found some interesting ways to extrapolate those. I really feel like he was building towards, can we spoil Game of Thrones mildly? I mean, it's been a while. Is anybody...
Listen, I will say this as the person who doesn't know all of the Game of Thrones stuff, but I know a tiny little bit. I give you as the permission as the guy who's only seen a season and a half. Go right ahead.
I'm just going to say I thought that I'm not going to say what that ending is, but I kind of thought that Rian Johnson was setting Rey up for a Daenerys Targaryen ending. How's that? Is that spoiler-free enough?
There you go. That's good.
That's pretty great.
And I really felt like that's what Rian Johnson was setting us up for. And I kind of feel like if he had made this movie, we would have gone there, and JJ sort of teased it, but not even to the level that sort of ending was teased with Luke in the original trilogy, in my opinion. But I really liked what Rian Johnson was doing there. And, some of the only thing I really had a big problem with that I didn't blame people for thinking was ridiculous was the whole Mary Poppins, Princess Leia flying through space scene, just because it looked ridiculous to me.
Yeah, it's so dopey looking. Agreed.
Yeah, but other than that, I didn't have problems with it at all.
Yeah, me too. Everything you just said. I think that also, what they originally went into the sequels with is something different than what they ended up with. They originally were going to have 3 different directors, different creators creating these 3 different movies. And they sort of, I don't know who's blame is the wrong word, but I don't know who is the point person for, well, we've got to fix all of this stuff now. Star Wars is broken. Let's get back JJ, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And JJ Abrams is not going to take chances. He is just not that guy. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing because, he, again, like I said, with the baseline Star Wars stuff, he is not going to make a movie that makes people go, that's it, I'm done. He's not that guy.
I'm going to say about J.J. Abrams, I liked what he did with Star Trek because for me, it was easy to improve upon what had come out beforehand. And J.J. Abrams and Damon Lindelof worked together on Lost. I think Lindelof has proven himself post-Lost that he can come up with a complete idea and finish it and nail the landing twice. Yeah. I still don't know that J.J.'s ever finished what he started strongly, per se. Because, he kind of bailed out on Star Trek and then it's been passed on. And that's something that never really ends anyway. And then I don't know that this ending, I'm convinced he didn't see this ending when he was writing the first one.
Well, here's the thing.
And definitely not. But because he was never going to write the ending anyway, because here's the thing with JJ, everything that you just mentioned, Bruce, he has never finished anything. He has always left before he's had to finish something.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at something like Lost, for instance, Lost, he set up all of these mystery boxes and then he leaves, right? And so now it's Damon Lindelof's problem. And Lindelof at that time wasn't a strong enough creator to be able to fix everything that was there.
Still fairly green.
But I will tell you now, Damon Lindelof is now in my not so humble opinion, I think that he has grown the most of anyone that we have seen in the last 10 years in nerd culture. That now he has gotten to a point for me where at one point, if I heard Lindelof was attached to something, I wouldn't have cared. But now, you got Lindelof on this? Then I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the ride because it's going to be nuts and he's going to have something interesting to say and he's going to stick it. And I'm
Kathleen Kennedy, if you're listening, Sweet Shanzi from the internet will be so in for the next trilogy if it's a team of Ryan Johnson, and Damon Lindelof.
Well, they have me already. I mean, they could hire Mark Hamill's son to do the scripts, and I would still be on board for it.
Yeah, well, we're going to see the movie. The point is how bad we shout at the screen on the third time we watch it opening weekend. Let's start with where this movie starts for a minute, because I just kind of want to get your guys' feedback on this. This is something that some people, I'm sure it's a problematic for. Some people it's not at all. I wonder where you guys fall. But it's like at the beginning, Palpatine is alive. Just believe us, he's alive. Like there's
well, and let me stop you there.
Okay.
The biggest thing in this universe is that Palpatine is still alive. We don't get to see the character's reaction when we find that out. That is such a gigantic miss.
I good, because I was worried you guys were going to tell me to quit being like comic book guy. And, I know something somewhere is going to go into painful detail about how he was still alive. But you've got all this stuff that they axed, all this Legends continuity, as they call it now, that's no longer continuity, that really gave them a blueprint for why Palpatine's still alive that a ton of the fandom would roll with. And they don't have to use it exactly like it was in the old Legends EU, but man, just something to give us a hint, like how is it that he survived that? Is this a clone? Does he have more clones? I mean, they alluded to cloning Snoke. I just think a little something to let us know how he's alive and how he hid for 30 years. Why is now when he's, coming back to the fore? I just would have liked a little bit more explanation for why. And also why I don't know. I'd never heard of Exegol before. Had you guys?
No, but they do a little more than hint that he's a clone, that he's a cloned thing, Snoke. I mean, you see the
Jars.
the jars with him in it.
Which I expected Watchmen to have jars of people, which it didn't. So another day. But Snoke's a clone, no question. But I kind of would have liked to. And, and then there's part of me like, is this like a Wizard of Oz scenario? Because he's stuck to that big electronic arm, almost like it's a terrible early generation Disney animatronic. And maybe there's like the Wizard of Oz hiding back there to pay no attention to the man with the joystick controlling all this.
That'd be pretty sweet.
It almost feels like he's a tacked on thing. Anyway, I am not here to damn the Rise of Skywalker. I enjoy the Rise of Skywalker.
That's one of those 2, maybe 3 things I'm going to get off my chest and be done with it.
Yeah, and the Emperor is one of the big problems I have with the movie. With a lot of Star Wars, the problem is with the Emperor himself.
And, being a comic book fan really helps you deal with stuff like this, because comics always are pulling the dead coming back to life without explanation. Yeah. Like there was a time when Frank Castle was dead. They started a new series with the new writer. Page 1 is like, you remember how I was dead and I was an angel? Forget about that. It's not like that anymore. And then he just goes. And that's kind of what this is. So being a comics fan sets you up for it. And I do know we're going to get the very, very long, detailed explanation about what was up with Palpatine between Endor and now, or not Endor, but between, I guess Endor. He wasn't really there, but he was up on the base.
They should just start writing new stuff. I know that people are getting, look, we need a hired gun to fix our continuity. Like, I know that that's all going to happen, and that's fine. I'm not going to read any of that stuff. Give me something new.
Yeah. And also a lifetime of being a big time fantasy fan, more with books than movies. Up until Lord of the Rings, we didn't have a lot of good fantasy movies. And then we got Lord of the Rings. We got our Game of Thrones on HBO. So we've had a little bit of a nice treat the last 20 years in fantasy that we didn't have before, when Star Wars was the best because it had spaceships and robots.
Have you never heard of Neverending Story?
That is a beautiful movie. You're right. But it's not the same as Star Wars.
It's never ending, Bruce.
That's why I never made it to the end. Anyway, so this feels like Mordor, so I can go with it. This feels like Harry Potter, so I can go with it. It's like Voldemort is just still alive. That's it. Evil people wanted to keep him alive, so he's still alive. When he's pulling Star Destroyers up from beneath the ground, that's Sauron pulling his army of Nazgul up in Mordor. So I can absolutely roll with that. But this is going to lead into one of those second things that doesn't make this movie problematic as a standalone movie, but for the kind of guy like me who follows what the Force can and can't do, what you can do with the light side, what you can do with the dark side, and you need those rules to make it fun to kind of look for clues within those rules. I don't know that I've ever seen the dark side of the Force be able to manufacture Star Destroyers out of the dirt.
There's like some sort of there's a throwaway line, I forget exactly what it is, where they sort of half explain that in a weird sort of way, like somebody's working on it or something. So it's not like he's conjuring these, out of the earth, as it were, like literally out of the earth, Adam and Eve style. So like he's not really doing that per se. But
that's what the image it retells us.
Yeah, of course. That's what I think. I don't know.
These are orcs being pulled from the mud, and I can go with it because I can go with that kind of stuff. But I know some people aren't going to go with it.
And we call those people sad because that's half the things in this movie that people have that I've heard people talk about having problems with. And while I understand those complaints and I believe that they can absolutely be valid complaints that should be voiced and recognized and all that stuff, I just don't care. I don't.
Congratulations for making the Death Star significant for 4 out of 9 movies.
But yeah, I mean,
I do have to say that for the last 2 Star Wars movies, no Death Star got blown up. That's great.
What happened to Starkiller Base? Did it not get blown up?
Oh, it was blown up, but that was the first movie.
Up, but good.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But
big an explosion as any Death Star.
and this is also, to me, it was kind of a nice commentary of the natural progression of weapons technology, or technology in general. Is now what you used to have a whole moon-sized base to generate the power for a planet-destroying laser. Now they've got it small enough to fit on a capital ship.
I love that. I thought that was the great idea.
And that also means,
Bruce, what's another one of your nits?
Okay, another one of my nits is still just sort of an extension of what I said about the massive shift in what I understand the Force to be. Like instantaneous teleportation of inanimate objects via the Force. I mean, that kind of is like OP. If this were a game, that would break the game. Because at any point, it's going to be like, why aren't you doing that? That's the whole, if you've got Superman in the movie, then Superman just solves the problem immediately kind of conundrum. If you can start instantaneously teleporting things like lightsabers and necklaces, and you can have long-distance lightsaber battles using the Force, I hope that doesn't, I'm hoping that maybe dies with Kylo and that suddenly nobody else is able to figure that trick out or something.
I don't think we need more of it, but I did not mind it here. But I do believe you are correct in as much as I don't want to see this thing, because between things like that, which again, I like the narrative form of it all, just being able to take the necklace and having the necklace, then being able to identify where the necklace came from so they could head out towards that area. And the lightsaber bit, I like those gags. Whatever, we can call them, believable, unbelievable, who gives a crap. I think for story-wise purposes, they're fantastic.
And I'm going to go on record as saying that was something very specific to the bond between these two, and that shouldn't be considered a standard Force power. Like, that'll never be replicated again.
Yes, let's not have, as cool as it was and as much as I enjoyed it, I do not need to see that sort of thing again. I agree.
Nobody wants another trilogy of 3 movies where the good guy and bad guy never have to leave their bedroom to have all their lightsabers.
or at the same time, just touching each other.
I don't think we're going to see, if we're going forward into the future of the Star Wars galaxy, or universe, I don't think we're going to see much Force using.
I think we are, because of the Mandalorian and a character there who will.
Oh, right! I totally forgot.
He's going to age up to be just the same equivalent age as a young Mark Hamill when they start the next trilogy.
So you think that they're going to end up using Baby Yoda for the long haul?
Well, he's out there, and it's Star Wars. If you don't use it, people are going to ask you why you're not using it.
It's true.
And also, if this, if this individual pops up with some ridiculous Force sensitivity, then that means other people are out there with ridiculous Force sensitivity. As we get to how the movie unfolds, I'll tell you kind of what I wanted to see to sort of wipe out the super users of the Force and just have it go back to sort of the level it felt like in Star Wars, where there were people that were Force sensitive and they kind of figured out as they go along. I think there's a way they could do that, and even a character that could do that could bridge this trilogy and whatever comes next. But we've just got a lot of ground to cover first.
I think it's at the same time, too, for me, as is always with what I want to see after this, either go way in the future or way in the past. That's all.
And I think I'll go ahead and get my third nitpick out, and I've already said that. I wanted them to full-on pull the switch. I thought that the only way I really want to see Kylo go full-on good guy is if we see Ren go full-on, like just be driven insane by the dark side of the Force and have to be dealt with by Kylo when he's a good guy. And that's what I think Rian Johnson was setting us up for. And I'll say this because hold
on, Bruce, because you lost me here. So
okay,
you want to see him throw the switch? You want to see Ben throw the switch on Kylo Ren?
I want to see Kylo become Ben, and I want to see Rey become Empress Palpatine.
You want to see Rey? I see. Okay.
I want to see the full on like if Hulk Hogan becomes a bad guy, Ric Flair's got to be a good guy. Like I just want to see that balance in the Force maintained.
Gotcha.
And balance in the storytelling. I really want to see it. And it could even be driven as just her essentially being driven insane and so distressed by the situation. Palpatine pushes the right buttons as she strikes out in anger, and then she gets overwhelmed with all these Sith almost against her will. It's like a mercy when they have to end her. And of course, Ben dies in the process. And then, your super users are all gone, and all we have are untrained Force sensitive people out there now.
Gotcha.
Because also Leia is gone by the end of this movie, and Luke was gone before. So I think it'd be nice to say, okay, so there are always going to be Force sensitive people out there, but it's always going to be kind of like Finn, who has a feeling that is beyond natural and inner supernatural. And that he's Force sensitive, but there's nobody to teach him what to do with it. And if I can go back to why I really thought we were on the trajectory for the final battle to be cheering for Ben instead of Rey, is because the very first time they fight in The Force Awakens, Kylo Ren, who's had years of training under both Skywalker and Snoke, is just beaten. He doesn't even make it a good match out of it with Rey the first time they fight. And I love that she's just so naturally powerful. But then what's the joy of that in the big finale? The person who has spent the last two movies essentially showing that Kylo Ren is not even close to being a match for her. Suddenly in this movie, he's routinely outskilling her without any additional training, and she's been continuing to train. So that was, kind of my third pick, and that's one big pick, but a couple little parts on it. Doesn't make me not enjoy the movie. It's just how it fits in with the over framework of the trilogy.
Maybe you don't see him training. I don't know that we don't know.
I mean, who's to train him? He's got nobody now.
I don't know. He went through a village killing a lot of people at the end there to get the old Sorcerer's Stone, as I'm going to call it, the Wayfinder.
But honestly, there's no one to train him. He left Luke. He killed Snoke. He hasn't made contact with Palpatine yet. I mean, there is no one to train him. And he's more conflicted than he's ever been. So that's, I was kind of seeing like it was the influence of the dark side maybe bringing Rey down a little bit, and Rey has to taste defeat to need to search for another source of power to rise up. I thought it was wonderful when she killed him, and she kills him and then she heals him with the Force and brings him back to life. I think when she ran the saber through him, that's when we should have had the conversation with Harrison Ford, with Han Solo. And, you move the dialogue around a little bit. And then the last thing that Han says to Kylo is, Kylo died today. Ben still lives. And then we see her heal him and he comes back. She runs away. He throws away his lightsaber. Like that.
Well, I mean, that's a movie that you're writing. Like that's not.
You're right. But it's the parts are there. You just got to rearrange them a little bit.
Right. But that's not the movie we got. I think you're right. They should have played around with it more. The problem is what my biggest nit with this movie is that you have different creators basically fighting each other at the end of this for episode 9, basically, because you got J.J. Abrams basically trying to rewrite his stuff back into this. Wanted to see all of his stuff back. Whether it's the Knights of Ren, whether it's the Mask, whether it's who are Rey's parents. I mean, all of that stuff. The stuff that Rian Johnson could not have cared less about. You know what I mean? Like, so you have that, and then on top of that, you have the Lucas stuff on top of it, where you want to be able to, like wink and a nod. See, we know, George, like we're still keeping you in mind, kind of a thing. But he's also fighting those things also, because that's what he did in the first place.
Can I say some really nice things to offset what sounded like my harping on negative?
Because I'm not done with my thought. So, and then we'll get to that. So, like, basically what I'm trying to say is that this movie doesn't have time for the things that I think that we like a certain style of movie at this point, the three of us. And that certain style is The Mandalorian, is what we're looking for, basically.
Yes.
And so this is not that. This is the Fast and the Furious set in Star Wars movies. And look, that's fine, but that isn't what we want. What we want is more Mandalorian, and that's great. And so on top of the breakneck pace, the fact that we don't get to see basically what I'm trying to wrap up into saying is that this movie is not as good as it could have been, is what we're trying to say here. and we still like it. It just doesn't mean that it's great.
Yeah. Now, something that I do like, I kind of like to talk about each character. We've covered a few here.
Sure.
I really like what's going on with Finn and Poe here. And I think I'll start off talking about Poe a little bit, because I think this is not the Poe we saw in the first two movies. And I agree with them. And a big part of that is because this Poe is perhaps the second highest ranking member of the Resistance. And he never saw himself having that trajectory, because he is totally anxious and uncomfortable with everything that's going on here. And that's a little bit different than what I felt like we saw in the last two movies, but it makes sense, especially there at the end after Leia passes on and, he tells Finn, hey, I just, he finally says, I just can't do this on my own. And then we see him more relaxed from that point on and more comfortable with what he's doing. And I like that. I thought that was a little bit of subtlety that I don't necessarily expect to see with JJ. And I like that they didn't go out and call it out. Ever since you got, put in charge of the Falcon, now you're a nervous wreck. I just kind of figured it out. I also love, this is like a total like Family Guy or Simpsons thing, but they're on the Millennium Falcon and we don't see the inside of the ship for like 5 seconds. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, what do you think, Claude? And it's just like Claude has always been here. I'm pretty sure Claude hasn't always been here. And it's not like Claude is just your standard Star Wars alien. He looks ridiculous, like a good kind of ridiculous. But like, there's no way you would miss Claude if he'd been on the Falcon in the last two movies, would you?
My brother just saw it today, and that was one of his things of like, who's the guy on the Millennium Falcon? What does he do? He doesn't have any hands.
And I like it. Like, what do you think, Claude? And then we don't see him again until the end of the movie when it looks to me like he's getting ready to make out with Dominic Monaghan, which I want to read that comic book.
It'll be published if if Marvel has anything to say about it.
Oh, there's going to be a great Marvel comic about Claude because he's like the Poochie of this movie. I love it. And then Finn, I mean, what do you guys have to say about Finn? I like Finn. I'm sorry. Yeah, Finn. Ooh. I already talked about Poe.
Yeah, well, so I like Poe, and like this one, I think you're right. The personalities definitely changed. I don't think they've ever really. I mean, because if I'm not mistaken, wasn't his character supposed to die, or one of them was supposed to die?
No, Poe was supposed to die in the first one.
Yeah, and they were like, "Oh, we like this guy. We're going to keep him around," and so they did. And I don't think that they ever truly nailed down exactly who this guy was or what his kind of vibe was and everything. Because even in this movie, it's a little bit all over the place. It's like sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I like this guy. And then other times I'm like, what acting choices is he making here? I'm very confused.
His ex-girlfriend is a Power Ranger, which is nice.
She's great, man. Carrie Russell coming back, a little JJ connection and stuff. And I thought she was actually really great. I thought it was Karen Gillan at first.
That's exactly who I thought, man. I'm glad I wasn't alone on that. The voice,
and kind of the body type, just that long, lean kind of look.
Like Karen Gillan doing an American accent. That's what Carrie Russell sounds like. Now I know.
But she was great in that little role. And again, what I love the fact that we are living in Star Wars world, and for the most part, we're keeping on masks. And the heck with you wanting us to take them off. We don't care. We're not really going to do that.
But I guess we got to talk about Finn.
Right.
I guess the first thing about Finn, when he's going down into the sand fields or the sinking fields, whatever they call quicksand here, and he says, "Ray, I've got to tell you something," and then he never tells us what that something was. You guys have much to say about what that something was?
Well, he knows that she's a Palpatine.
That's what I thought. I've seen this movie 3 times. So the first time through, I thought, okay, Leia has told him about her parentage or whatever. But when he first gets that information, he's actually shocked to hear that. So that's not what it was, in my opinion. I think he's going to tell her that he's talked to Leia and he is Force sensitive. The Force did lead him to her for some reason.
That's what I thought it was going to kind of be, is just some sort of like, I feel this kind of stuff too, and I don't really know what's kind of going on or whatever. I need you to, and again, it's something that he doesn't want to talk about in front of Poe, which also makes me think that he's kind of embarrassed the fact that he just goes like, maybe I'm dreaming this up, this kind of Force thing, but I am feeling something. So
and there's also the later part where Finn's arguing with Poe when Rey's riding that boat out to the wreckage of the Death Star, and he's like, you don't understand what kind of forces she's dealing with or something like that, and Poe says, and you do? He says, yes, I do. And so does Leia. And he and Leia are both Force sensitive, is what I'm thinking that to mean.
Well, the part I want to talk about with Finn, because we kind of breezed over it.
Yes, sir.
Is the character development. Because, the last time we saw this character, he was a sucky baby coward. And
he was going to be. Yeah. Oh, wait. Okay. Then the transition. Yes. Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Sorry, I'm a dick.
Right. And so he's a sucky baby coward, and then he almost sacrifices himself for the sake of Rose Tico. And then at the last minute doesn't. And I was glad to see from Get of Go in this episode that he has moved on and transitioned into something that a leader. He's been here since the beginning. He's been and he's kind of transitioned into, now he is the heart of the resistance. He wasn't always, and because they were trying to put, in my opinion, they were trying to put too much on General Organa, which is now they have it. Now they're kind of splitting up the duties, which is another great part of this movie is that, look, we, when Lando says we had each other, we weren't trying to do it ourselves. We had each other. And that's kind of that's what they get to by the end. I don't like how they get to it, but I like that they got there.
Also, given the way that JJ echoed Star Wars so much with The Force Awakens, when they're in that sinking pit, all I can think is like, oh, okay. So at some point he's going to tell Rey that she's his cousin or something, that they're related. Like, this is the Luke and Leia, and Han thinks that Luke and Leia are in love when it's really their brother and sister kind of thing. That didn't happen yet, but I could see a scenario where Palpatine had two sons that didn't know each other existed. He told both of them they were his only son, and it was up to them to do him proud. And he was, always planning to kill the one that disappointed him, because that's just how Palpatine rolls.
How the hell does Shiv have time for a relationship where he's raising a son?
Palpatine getting around, boy.
Yeah, he's he just shows up once a year to berate the child and then goes back to murdering people.
I got to get back on my murdering. Hold on.
But the one
is this like an Edsel Ford situation?
Very well could be, man. But also the problem is, with me feeling very strongly that we're going to find out in some future material that Finn is Force sensitive. Without a doubt. I mean, that's a given, man. There's no way. I mean, there's also still the theories that Han is Force sensitive that really got reinforced when he shows up as not quite a Force ghost. But with Finn, now the argument's going to start going around like, what is his parentage? Who is his family? Because just like Rey, he was essentially sold off into man,
I can't we just kill all this at this point? Like,
I think we can, but that's what's worrying me is, man, his parent
who cares?
Be somebody significant, whether we like it or not.
I mean, I get that there's always going to be people who want to like tread through that stuff. But I'm sure not one of them. I don't care.
There's definitely going to be the theory that while Han was off running some spice or something, that Leia and Lando got a little frisky, and next thing you know, there was Finn's family line.
That's terrible.
Fine. I don't need a 350-page novel.
Yeah, that's going to be. There's also going to be the competing story that Mace Windu had a secret child nobody knew about. I mean, that's going to be atrocious. But the one I could go with would be the Palpatine selling his grandkids off. Or Palpatine's children selling off his grandkids so that he can't get his hands on them.
So who wants to hear a crazy theory I've got?
Let's go for it.
This is as wild as it gets. I believe I am the originator of this idea. I've heard no one else say such a thing. And I came up with this idea because I saw this movie 2 days before everyone else. So I came up with it by seeing or hearing nothing else from anyone. I am under suspicion, let's put it that way. I'm under suspicion that may not have actually been Harrison Ford. I think that may have been a CGI character.
Huh.
Okay.
I just think that I don't know why. I see a lot of the facial movements and stuff. Certainly things that Harrison Ford has done in the past. Has Harrison Ford done it in this particular series or in the last couple of years? I'm hesitant to say that he has. It very may not be. We may see behind the scenes footage with him there on set. But I would not be surprised if one day we find out that was a CGI character. That's just a thought.
Okay.
I really thought I was going to get pushback or something. Guess not.
No, man. Carrie Fisher has been deceased for what now? 3 years, 4 years. She has top billing in this film. They can do anything they want now.
It's true, top billing.
Some of that dialogue was so similar to the conversation they had in The Force Awakens.
Yeah, it's almost like it's the exact same.
Yeah, I wouldn't be amazed to find out that they had just filmed that scene turning out a couple of different ways to throw people off the track, and that this was originally like something thrown in the garbage in front of a green screen, and they just popped it in here.
That's exactly what they did.
I'm glad I'm not being seen as a crazy person here. That's good. I feel good about myself. Thank you, boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's far-fetched in any way, sir.
Good.
However, Claude was not GI. Claude was practical.
Couple of little takes here. Best C-3PO we've ever had.
Yeah.
I think I'm a C-3PO authority. I think I might be one of the few people who says like C-3PO is my character in Star Wars.
Yeah, snooty, know-it-all. Sounds right.
He's one of my favorites. I'll just say that. I don't think this is the best we've ever had, but it could have been. I would have been interested if they weren't able to repair his memory, and then going forward, we're dealing with a really old droid that essentially has the droid equivalent of dementia, and how heartbreaking that is for the people that care about him.
But we've seen that in another sci-fi movie already.
Oh, we have?
Yeah, with Data and lore and.
Oh, I'm not much of a Star Trek guy.
Yeah, and if you've seen all that, you'd know. So results.
I'm glad then that JJ didn't repeat that.
But I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I've definitely had some favorite moments of C-3PO. I don't think this is his best, but it's good because he's always good.
It honestly, I don't know that I agree with that, because Anthony Daniels, for a while now, has really felt like he's just kind of delivering the same thing over and over. It felt like he went, there's been 9 of these movies. I am in every single one of them. Chances are this is going to be darn near close to it for me. I'm getting in the twilight years of my life. Perhaps I should really, try to hammer this last one home. And I feel like he did. I mean, and it sounds nuts, but from the movements of the character to the sincereness of the voice and stuff, and they gave him a lot of really great, funny stuff to say, dry wit humor, people staring at him when he says the inappropriate stuff, his interaction with Babu Frick and all that stuff. I loved it. I can't believe that I was actually enthused to see a C-3PO character in a Star Wars movie. I was shocked.
I do think the best moments when he's talking about that festival only happens once every 42 years, and it's a festival of kites and sweets, and it's just kind of ridiculous. Everybody turns around to stare at him. He waits for about 3 Mississippis, then he turns around to see what they're staring at. I love that for some reason. I think that was C-3PO's high point.
And Star Wars goes to Burning Man. What's not to like?
No, Bruce, that is not. That's C-3PO's high point in this movie.
No, it's not. It's when he has a heartfelt thing where he looks at everybody and says, I'm looking at all my friends for the last time, and I'm like, I watched this movie 3 times, and I teared up every single time. It's disgusting.
I feel like that's just performance. He doesn't really feel
C-3PO
that way.
made me care.
C-3PO enough to know that he's, he's pretty miserable about them.
But
he's like, looking at you for one last time, enjoy.
I'll tell you who's miserable.
Oh, nerds!
R2-D2. R2-D2 got the shaft on this film. He ain't in but 2 minutes.
By BB-8. I mean, he's just...
Yeah, they haven't needed him for 3 movies now.
It's just it's a sad thing to just see a character just kind of really maligned so much. So they're like, not only do we got this cute roly droid, we're going to get another cute roly droid, but this one's on a wheel.
Well, at least they're going to have to... I think they're going to have to at least put C-3PO into the background with whatever they do next. I really think they need to BB-8 him.
Also, I want to ask you a question, Adam, based on things that you previously have said on this very episode.
Mm-hmm.
Is it your belief that Anthony Daniels is still in the C-3PO costume?
Well, I know to some degree he's they fit him in for some stuff. For this particular movie, I'm not 1,000% sure, but I know a lot of or at least some of the ones that they did in like prequels and stuff where he was obviously just a big giant mesh of wires and whatnot. They kind of had him more or less green screen behind puppeteer the suit, if you will. So either or. But again, I think a lot of it really is, honest to God, how it's written, and his voice is a bit of a difference there. Maybe the movement-wise, maybe there is another actor in there, and that's why it seemed fresh. That's a possibility.
I think it's one of those things where, like, just to keep the streak going, there's a couple of frames with him in the suit.
Probably, yeah, exactly. Like sitting down, maybe not walking around and all that jazz. But
yeah,
probably
or you're standing up for a minute. But yeah, I think it's one of those things like with NASCAR, they use one piece of sheet metal from an actual Ford so they can call the car Ford, but there's nothing Ford about it kind of thing.
Couple of, just anything above the waist he did, but anything below the waist, it's like, we'll fix that in post.
Yeah. But they did get Warwick Davis in this.
They sure did. As his original character.
Yeah, which is great. Why
does an Ewok need a last name?
So you don't get confused, but there's 3 Wickets in his town.
How are you going to send, where are you going to send the post?
I mean, even just be glad he's not Wicket Skywalker at this point.
Yeah, exactly. The way things are going, anybody could be a Skywalker.
I'm a Skywalker.
I'm a Skywalker too, and it just becomes a Spartacus situation where everyone in Star Wars land is standing up saying, "I'm Skywalker." That's eventually what we're leading to here. Clearly,
I did hear a guy say, "Wow, I can't believe her name is Ray Star Wars now." So,
that's pretty great. That is pretty great.
Yeah, that's my new rap name is Ray Star Wars.
I like. Listen, I like this movie a lot. I mean, it's got its problems. There are a lot of.
Well,
things.
let's go with the stuff that we really like.
Okay. Go ahead. No, you start. Actually, I'll piggyback.
Well, I know the thing that you love the most, Adam. You brought up on The Mandalorian, which is Babu Frick. It is your favorite thing.
Yes, I listen. I came in. I saw that character when they talked about him in the street there, and then they come in, and I see the little guy, and I'm like, oh boy, one of these. I can't stand. We're having another weird little Star Trek or Star Wars character that basically is just all whatever. And man, oh man, if I didn't fall in love in about 4 seconds, I was just like, oh, what is this weird little thing? And it turns out it's like the gal that does the voice is the same person who did Moaning Myrtle in Harry Potter, which is hilarious. But there's just something about this tiny little, cat rat creature thing that sounds like a fat Italian grandma that just has me giddy. I don't know. I just love it.
I was uncomfortable with the size of his hands.
That can be creepy for some people, but it works.
I never really thought about this before, but I really like Billie Lourd and these. Period. Number one, I really like Billie Lourd as an actress. I think she's pretty damn good, but I really like her in Star Wars.
And I'm glad that by all indications, I think she can stick around sort of as long as she wants to because she's doing a good job. There's definitely no backlash against her. I didn't really know who she was until Scream Queens and the Star Wars movies that she showed up in, but I'm a fan too.
If you really want to see just how different, because I thought that she was just basically like just walking through this role. I didn't realize how much acting she was doing until I saw her in Booksmart.
Yes, I've seen Booksmart. I forgot that I've seen that, but I like her in that too.
Man, and after you see her in that, it's like, oh, she's actually a really great actress.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are we still talking about some good stuff here? Can I talk about?
Let's talk about the stuff that we like.
Chewie got his medal.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, another moment where you just like, oh my gosh, you did it. You wound up everything, and we kind of gave him this, and it kind of it closes the chapter on Chewie really, really well, and I love it.
And also, as much as they kept telling Rey that she's their last hope, I think it gets said about 6 times by different people in this movie. Somebody like maybe J.J. Abrams really, really was hoping he was going to get episode 9, The Last Hope.
Oh, yeah. Didn't even think about
really
that.
book into New Hope and The Last Hope.
Yep, that would make sense.
They were like a little too on the nose there. You know?
I mean, it's in the opening crawl. He at least got it in the opening crawl. People say it out loud in dialogue multiple times in the movie. Like, he was really trying to sell that. I get the idea.
One of my favorite things, which when I first saw it was going to be one of my least favorite things, which was stormtroopers with jetpacks.
Oh man, that's just plain awesome. I love that whole sequence. I think that is just so awesomely imaginative, and like how the bikes launch them off into the air and then the jetpacks kind of take over. Man, that's cool stuff.
I did not like that when I first saw it. Why I love it so much is that they're really bad at it. They suck so bad with those jetpacks.
And it also makes sense here, you know, like these movies are beyond what we've seen before. What would bug me is like there would be moments in the prequel movies where they would have technology far out. Like, why aren't they still doing that if they could do that back then? That would pop up a
like
lot.
R2D2.
Yeah, but here at least it makes sense. And also, like you said, they're so bad at it, but you could totally see like some desperate weekend, like these are the weekend warriors of the stormtroopers. You know,
one of the funniest moments to me is when that one stormtrooper blows up on the side of a mountain.
Yeah,
terrific.
Boom, and it's just a perfect cartoony kind of thing. But all of that's super fun. I like the kind of tank motorcycle thing that they were on. That was a really cool, neat design, and I like how they thwarted it as well. Again, another fun storytelling thing that they're pulling off there. Let's see what else.
I'm going to tell you, this might sound silly to you guys, but I really liked it so much. When Adam Driver, when Ben Solo is finally fighting against the Knights of Ren after he's made the face turn, and he doesn't have a lightsaber, so Rey does the little trick where she puts the lightsaber behind her back and teleports it to him. He pulls out the lightsaber and takes just like a slight bow and then starts fighting. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Kind of,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he holds his hands wide and just the slightest bow with his shoulders, then starts fighting. And also he's a little bit of an awkward, like his movements are awkward and good at the same time. It just gave me a John Wick feeling to that particular fight. Like
he is a bit hurt too, so that doesn't help.
What's that?
He's a bit hurt as well. That doesn't help his situation.
Exactly. John Wick's always extremely hurt, and all the love I have for the fight scenes in John Wick, I had that same kind of love when he's fighting against the Knights of Ren there.
Pretty good lightsaber matches throughout this entire thing. Really neat stuff that we've never seen before, with kind of stopping it with the Force in your hand and everything. I thought that was super dope.
And you know, after he gets stabbed, the hole stays in his shirt for the rest of the movie, which is doesn't sound like a great thing, but if that hole hadn't stayed there, it would have driven me crazy. So I'm so glad it's there.
I'm the exact same way. It's just like, don't you heal that close-up duck on it.
But, you know, in Dungeons and Dragons, you can cast a min spell and fix that hole in your shirt.
But I think Sean's absolutely right in as much as this movie really lives and dies on the performances of Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver. They are both just giving it every single thing that they've got in this movie, and boy does it show. And it feels like somebody cares about Star Wars, and it's refreshing.
Yeah. It really seems like Star Wars when my cousin had all the good Star Wars toys. He was like the biggest Star Wars fan I knew back in the little town I lived in back in the, you know, actual 1983, 84 time. He had all the toys, and when we were playing, you know, we would do sort of some crazy far out stories where you could use the Force to do the sort of things the Force is using here that wasn't in those original trilogy movies. This does really feel like a fan went and made like one of his playtime sessions into a movie. It's kind of cool when you think.
Well, I mean, all you need to know is that there's quicksand in the movie. I mean, that is such a child's thing.
And it's like, it's great quicksand because it really is quick, which I thought was super great. And I don't know, I'm like, oh look, space quicksand. I love it. It's just so stupid, and then it gets them down in a little thing up underneath. Like, that's ridiculous. But the best part also is
the whole segment feels like the best of Indiana Jones too. They find the dagger with the inscription that they got to use to find the artifact. I mean, that had a moment of Indiana Jones, and I mean that as a compliment, not as an insult.
The only problem I have with the quicksand is that now they've just burned an idea for an entire planet of quicksand.
Quicksand
I
planet.
also like how it's the most easily avoidable, like sand, a gravel pit, sand.
Yeah.
Like pretty easy to avoid.
They were thrown off of a speeder. They can't.
Right. And that's why they couldn't avoid it. But that's why people still like have huge parties, which every 42 years, 1977 was 42 years ago.
Yes. And I love I love 3PO's line in there. You didn't call my name, sir, but I'm okay. Like,
That is
really great
very
lines,
Bruce
man.
line right there.
It's a lot of fun, and that's the thing. And while one of my complaints is that this movie does not stop, it continues going and going and going and going, and there's no real time to breathe or rest or live in exactly what's happened. So everything feels super rushed and stuff. That being said, it's never boring, and I never feel. I guess the only time that I can, there's a couple times where you feel like you could just use like a little bit of downtime to kind of take a breather, but we don't really do that. But other than that, though, it still works more or less.
I was happy with the pacing. I didn't think it felt all that rushed, but I'm also, spent the last 15 years watching superhero movies. But I felt like it was paced appropriately. I do feel like we had a few moments of tenderness there, here and there with different characters and things. I think we were able to catch our breath a couple of times.
But you know what my favorite scene in any of these new Star Wars movies is in the first one when we see Rey just going about her day, and you're listening to Rey's theme, and she's like sliding down on the piece of sheet metal down a dune.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, when she's back in Tatooine?
No, he's talking about in 7.
Oh, in The Force Awakens. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking Force Awakens. To me, that's the best. That's the best part of the new Star Wars movies. We never get that kind of feeling again for the rest of these movies.
And it's an interesting juxtaposition between what they're doing here versus what we're doing over on The Mandalorian. Is that The Mandalorian is, by and large, just very, very much taking its time and where it's getting you. So much so that many people complained about it. And I'm like, no, this is good stuff that, it's just not giving it to you in one big, giant, sloth. And that's exactly what they're doing here. And you see that it doesn't work nearly as well.
Only Star Wars fans in the same breath will complain that a show's too short and nothing happens. Also, how old is Lando now? Or just is Billy D's in his 70s?
Gotta be 70s.
Man, I like it. Another good thing in this show, we all know why Billy D is taking that former stormtrooper to look for her home planet.
Well, and that was hilarious because me and another manager,
and he's so smooth as can be.
Me and another manager of mine, we saw the movie before everything, and we looked at each other right when she sat down and he started talking to her like, "Hey, do you know who your parents are?" And we're like, "Is he just going, hey, are you my kid? I get around the galaxy quite a bit, and
as long as we're not related, I got plans for you."
I don't know. I didn't feel like it was that. I felt like it was this is probably a kid who might collect on me if I'm not careful.
Let's go find out if I'm your father or not. Also, that actress that plays the former stormtrooper that rides the wildebeest horse, she's in season 2 of The End of the Effing World. She is a great actress.
Yes, man, she is.
Like, to see her in this role and to see the really cool, weird stuff she does in that role, I'm a big fan of hers now. Like, hugely.
And I love the connection that, between her and Finn and being, former stormtroopers and everything. That relationship, guess what, everybody? We bought that one because it felt like these two characters had something in common. They came from a specific world, and they share these same experiences. And the Rose Tico stuff just didn't really feel like that. This felt like a natural sort of thing.
And I really liked it that Poe didn't get his kiss at the end, because they end and people are running up and hugging and people are getting kisses. I'm like, okay, it's going to be one of those sappy, everybody gets their kiss. He gives the little nod of his head to Zori, and she just gives him the no, not going to happen shake and walks away. I love that.
Yeah, it was great. It's just but it also plays, it plays very well to, what they had set up previously and everything. And I really like the dynamic of those two characters back and forth and everything. Again, great storytelling there in a really fast fashion.
But I think pretty fun, man. Pretty fun. What'd you guys think of the ending on Tatooine?
I thought it was perfect. I'm like, to me, it's like if this is more or less where we've kind of began this saga. This is where we ended.
They had what I'm convinced was the exact same Jawa sound effect that they used in a Tatooine scene in Star Wars 2. I mean, it's very recognizable.
Well, yeah, you throw Utini in there and everyone's gonna. But like, listen, I laugh and cheer every single time I hear it because it's delightful. It's great. It's as far as I'm concerned.
Delightful, and I like
and a nice little bookend to Rey, because as you're describing what you liked about her riding the little sled down the sand dune, she does the same thing in her last scene in the trilogy.
I thought it was a beautiful way to end it.
It's just not the same, Bruce, and you know that it's not the same.
I know, but it's a nice little bookend.
It is.
Symmetry, I call it. Symmetry. I call it that because that's what it is.
Craziness. Well, we've got to kind of break this down here, but I will say this before we finish up our review here and everything. If you'd like to hear a couple other things that we have to say about this, why don't you check out this week's Dinger Zone, because we're going to be talking about things on that we did not hit here. How do you get that? Head on over to patreon.com/HMP and join up today. But before we get to that and all the other good stuff in our final review of this Last of the Skywalker series, we do have to ask ourselves one very important question, and that is how this movie relates back to one Sylvester Stallone.
You are roboting out like crazy, Adam. Hopefully this makes it all the way through.
Good deal.
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement. Before he wrote Rocky, Sylvester Stallone met with George Lucas and auditioned for the part of Han Solo. I don't think he would have been bad in the role, but I don't think he would have been one of the coolest characters ever. And to Stallone's credit, he knew he wasn't going to get the job based on Lucas's ambivalent demeanor during his reading. If you have ever been in this type of audition, you know the feeling. One time I auditioned for a Coke commercial, and the casting director told me halfway through, I even finished my one line of dialogue, "Thank you." And I knew I wasn't going to be the new face of Coke. When asked about the audition in 2010, Stallone told Ain't It Cool News it didn't meet with much approval, since when I stood in front of George Lucas, he didn't look at me once, obviously being very shy. Then I said, well, obviously I'm not the right type. And this is pretty typical for the older Stallone style quote, because it's contrite, shows a bit of humility. But to put the cherry on the top of this sundae, because no one messes with Stallone, he finishes his line with, "But it all worked out for the best since I don't look good in spandex holding a ray gun." And he's right, because we've all seen Judge Dredd, in which he wears spandex and holds a ray gun. And there you have it, HMPers. This week's Stallone connection is Sylvester Stallone himself. Please have a Merry Christmas, and for those of you who have asked, I haven't heard Santa Claus is Coming to Town by Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, which I've heard makes this a good Christmas for some reason. Merry Christmas, everybody. I'm Sweet Chauncey. Merry Christmas.
And I'll just say, you're welcome. I've shown massive amounts of restraint over these many years. I'd like to say that I commend myself for my honor and duty for being a good guy.
Because you know that if I see you again and you do that, I'm going to kick your ass.
That's true. And I don't like that either. I bruise easy, so won't have that. All right.
I still remember it's a solid 4 months of Adam wearing a fake mustache trying to hide from Sean that time.
It's not me,
Portrait? Who's this Adam Portrais?
I hear he's very intelligent and his takes are all the best. That's not true. That's how you know he's a phony. But we have no phonies here. We're all real when it comes to our rating, and that's how we have our own patented Robin rating system. Check that out over at facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast. It's right there at the top of the screen, and give us a like while you're there. Why don't you? Bruce, where does Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker fall on the Robin rating system for you, sir?
Well, I'm going to start off by saying that I have had no problem giving movies that aren't as good as this one pretty good Robin ratings. But because this is like in the whole Star Wars thing, it's finishing out a trilogy, I struggled trying to figure out where to place this more than I should have. And I've said this before. Other people have said this before. You guys have said this before. But we all kind of remember how when the prequels first came out, we sort of pretended like we liked them for a little while. You know, we didn't immediately start tearing into them. And then after we got a little separated from it, we looked back at it objectively. We're like, man, this was all a mess. And if you don't believe me that people pretended like they liked them, just look at how they opened all three of them. People didn't quit going after the first two. But with time, we look back and we didn't like him as much. I think this trilogy is going to be the opposite. Like, everybody's harping on what they don't like. Separated from the situation, you get some fresh eyes on it. People that aren't just like nuts for Star Wars talking about it. We're going to go back and look at these again and say, you know what? These are better than we gave them credit for at the time. And I'm going to be proud to say, yeah, I always kind of liked them a little bit all the way through. I never really turned on them. This is my least favorite of 7, 8, and 9, but that doesn't mean it's bad. So it's a Tim Drake. You know, I was like debating, is this a Tim Drake or not? And then I think of some of the movies I've given a Tim Drake without hesitation. And also it helps that we covered that Dark Knight Rises recently, where I said its biggest sin was that it followed the Dark Knight. And the biggest sin here is that it follows The Last Jedi, which I really like. So I'm saying Tim Drake.
Interesting. Sean, what do you got?
Yeah, it's a Tim Drake for me too. You know, I think that, like Bruce says, with time, people are going to look back on this and go, you know what, that isn't nearly as bad, unless they do something amazing, like, you know, because that could happen too, where we get some amazing trilogy that we didn't know was coming, or, you know, like maybe The Mandalorian is just the beginning of what will end up being what Star Wars was always supposed to be in the first place, which is a serialized television show. Who knows? But this franchise has me again, and it's had me since The Force Awakens. So it's a Tim Drake.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised from the sounds of it that you guys were that high, because I'm definitely going Tim Drake on this as well. I guess I'll go so far as to say a hi, Tim Drake. I had a lot of fun with this. I've seen it 3 times now. If you can, I would suggest the 3D. It's actually spectacular. I think it adds a lot of like good depth and storytelling stuff is going on when they're doing that. And I think it just makes for a much more dramatic looking picture and everything, and really separates stuff out. Made me kind of appreciate the visuals a lot more. And you don't see that with a lot of 3D films, but I was like, I'll give the 3D a shot, and sure, shooting it looks really great. So I suggest that.
And just to kind of point out what I already said, on Rotten Tomatoes, Revenge of the Sith is at 80%. This movie's at 56%. This movie is not significantly worse than Revenge of the Sith.
No, it is far better.
But that
80% came about when we were all still pretending like we liked the prequel.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, and I think you're exactly right, Bruce, is that this series will be the opposite of the prequels, in that in a couple years people are going to like them. And I think this one probably especially, that I think is being much maligned now. I think people will go back and were like, oh, you know what, maybe we were a little bit too harsh on that. Sure, it's not perfect, but for what we got, and the circumstances with all of this being made and going through so many different hands and committees, and of course being, you know, run by a giant conglomerate like Disney that's forcing you to hit dates and all these sorts of things. It's a tough call. It's tough to have that be perfect. And no Star Wars movie out there is perfect. You can nitpick every single one of them. So it's not something that's new, and I think when people can kind of get past that and just learn to enjoy it for what it is, they're going to be far, far happier for doing so. So Tim Drake for me as well. That is it, everybody. Giant episode here for you this week, but you know what? You deserve it. You're worth it. You know why? Because you love us, and we love you in return, and we'd love it that you go over to patreon.com/HMP, joining up today, getting the Dinger Zone, where we'll talk a little bit more Star Wars and all that kind of good stuff. In the meantime, though, Bruce, where might they find more of your work on the interwebs?
Well, if people love listening to reviews of shows that are finished in a 30 questions format and they use Stitcher, you're in luck. As of today, the Redford administration is finally on Stitcher.
There's been a lot of you that have been holding out. We know. You're like, I'm not listening until it's on Stitcher. Well, it's on there now. Actually, I don't know how you're listening to this show, because I know this show's not on Stitcher unless they've added it somehow surreptitiously.
Yeah, but Stitcher's had some problems the last 3 months. I got an email. They finally worked them out, and I added the show. So go over to Stitcher and listen to the Redford administration.
And I'm listening. I'm finding people more and more that are just starting to jump on Watchmen and everything. So they're coming to the party, man. It's still happening. Sean, where else might they go?
Why don't you find me on Twitter at Sean Kovacs 4, I believe. I'm Sweet Seanzy from the internet, and why don't you Why don't you write to me? I'll answer you back. I promise that I will.
He's very, very personable. So enjoyed that today. And we're coming up on our year-end spectacular, everybody. So we're actually doing a little bit more than a year. We're doing the entire decade. That's correct. A
decade?
A decade, yes. Throughout the decade, we have seen many a Star Wars and a comic book movie and properties. So we are going to talk about them all, nominate a couple of things, and of course, take some info from you guys as well. So if you have any favorites, anything that you'd kind of like to nominate for best of the decade, or your favorite HMP moments over across the years, we'd appreciate those as well. Hit us up at heromoviepodcast@gmail.com. Get yourself on the show, why don't you? So that is it, everybody. Join us next week for that spectacular episode, and if you're a Dinger Zone person, stick around because you're getting a little bit more episode. Until then, for Sweet Chauncey from the internet and Bruce Leslie, my name is Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
I'm already leaving.
Let me see. We have a scarf for Skywalker, right?
Yes.
And perfume for the princess?
Yes, yes, but
What about Han Solo?
Couldn't we get him earmuffs?
That leaves one big problem.
The what?
Couldn't we get him a comb?
We gave him a comb last year.
What can you get a Woody for Christmas when he already owns a comb? What can you get in a hurry for a furry kind of friend like that? Take home. Oh, he doesn't need a tie clip, and he doesn't use shaving foam. So, what can you get a Woody for Christmas when he already owns a comb? It's really a problem. What can you get a Woody for Christmas when he already owns a comb? What can you get in a hurry for a furry kind of friend like that to take home? No, he'll never wear galoshes.
Or a hat upon his furry dome.
So, what can you get a Woody for Christmas when he already owns a comb? Let's give him love and understanding, goodwill to men. Wrap it all up in bright colored ribbon and we give it to him all over again. That's what you get a Woody for Christmas when he already owns a comb. Let's give him love and understanding, goodwill to men. We wrap it all up in bright colored ribbon and we give it to him all over again. Love and understanding, goodwill to men. Wrap it all up in bright colored ribbon and we give it to him all over again.